as it always looks. As life gets harder, the absence of God doesn't make your life easier. Life is naturally going to get harder. Life is always going to be harder. Life is always going to have some sort of tribulation, and the absence of God doesn't make it easier. And a lot of the times on social media, especially TikTok, that's my main thing that I scroll through. And I see a lot of people say, well, God's not real because I go through so many trials and tribulations. And so now I don't believe in God. My question to those people is, or the conversation I would love to open up is, has your life got easier as a result of the absence of God? If the answer is yes, this video isn't for you. But for the 99% of people who actually still go through hard times, even when they don't believe in God, why do you choose to blame God for the fact that your life is hard? But when He's in your life and your life is hard, then you also try to find your way out of Christianity or believing in God. And something I had to learn the hard way is that your success is dependent on the submission that you give life and God. I've already made an entire video on this. And in the video, I just explained you need to be anchored in something. And especially with a lot of the butt hurt, I guess, comments online or people having so many they want trigger warnings for everything. They want warning signs for everything. They want disclaimers for everything. They want you to address everything perfectly. And if you don't, they feel like you're giving a negative message. And to those type of people that see when people are talking and people are trying to explain something or people are bringing a new perspective and they don't want to listen for small reasons that don't really matter, those are the same people who find it really hard to submit to a bigger, something bigger than them. And all your success is going to come from how much you can actually surrender to the thing that's bigger than you. You are not in control of anything. You are not able to control anything. Actually, it's a lot easier if you don't control it because you give up all responsibility. Not you don't give up responsibility, what you give up is the feeling of having everything on your shoulders. That's what you give up. You don't necessarily give up your responsibility to the obligations that you have and et cetera, et cetera. What you do though is you give up the weight that it holds on you. So someone who is not a believer in God versus someone who is a believer in God, they can be going through the exact same things in life. However, the person who doesn't believe in God puts all their stress onto their own shoulders. And every time something goes wrong, because it's life, there are ebbs and flows, there are ups and downs, there's valleys and mountains there. That's inevitable, right? And when something happens so great in your life, but it causes a retracement back down, and you're just like feeling like you're taking steps backwards, and you put all the weight of that on your own shoulders and you blame your own self or you blame your parents. I saw even today or this morning, I saw a TikTok of this guy who's like in his mid 20s who's like, I blame my parents for everything that's ever happened to me. Sure, you can do that, but how useful is that to your actual life? Because I'm willing to bet if your parents haven't accepted what they did to you or how they treated you or how they spoke to you or how they whatever, how they affected you, they're not going to ever do it. Normally, when someone is a person of integrity and they know they did something wrong, they will apologize to you before it even becomes a problem. But the fact that your parent, and it's been over 20 years, and they haven't apologized or even brought up any of the things that they've done to you, that's probably never going to happen. Not that it won't, but it's a very unlikely source of thinking that you think that after 20 years are going to magically wake up and say, oh my gosh, I did blah, 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 blah to my child. Let me go apologize to them. And even if they did, if all the stars aligned and they decided to apologize to you, they would still be a little bit too late. because you're not actually directly affected by the things that someone else has done to you. But if you are a blaming victim to people, so you're a victim who blames other people for your issues and problems, you will always see the world that way. And so when hardships happen to you and life is going bad, you feel like you're losing money, you feel like you're losing friends, or you don't have no friends, you feel lonely, you feel like, what is going on? All the things I've ever wanted are like 50,000 feet away from me. But even worse, some of them are 1 inch away. And I feel like, why can't I get those things? And we've all felt that way at some point. Or maybe you're feeling that way right now. And the best thing to that I personally know at the moment of my current level of understanding is that the absence of God doesn't make your life easier. What it does is puts a weight on your shoulders that doesn't have to be there. God does not exist. I mean, he existed before us, but follow me here. He does not exist to relieve us of every problem and struggle we may ever have. That's what heaven is for. Earth is a sinful, wicked place. And so if you're living on an earth that's sick and wicked, how do you expect life to be? The opposite of heaven. It is going to be hard. There are going to be so many trials. There's going to be physical labor. There's going to be so many things that actually physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally break you down and build you up and break you down again and build you back up. And you feel like life is just throwing you around. That's what happens on this earth. And the fact that you don't believe in God doesn't make you like, it doesn't give you a checkbox that says, okay, well, I don't believe in God, so I'm unsubscribing from all of the hurt and harm because it's God's fault. What it does, again, is it puts that back onto your shoulders. And as humans, we cannot rely on our own strength, our own knowledge, our own skills because we simply don't have the capacity. If every single thing that's ever happened to you in your life actually played out to its full extent, you probably wouldn't be here. I probably wouldn't be here. If all the things that have occurred in my life actually panned out to what they actually could have been in the worst sense, I probably wouldn't be here. Just like every single one of you guys that are going to watch this video over time. And it's so important to remember that you don't have to do it alone, even if you are alone. If you don't have a good relationship with your parents or you don't speak to them, it is around the holidays. So this is like a touchy subject for a lot of people. And you don't spend time with your family or don't have good relationships with your sister, brother, cousin, uncle, whoever, or you just aren't connected to certain people in your life. Maybe you have like one or two friends and one of them is on the internet and the other one is someone you never see. You don't ever get to really spiritually bond with people. One, church is a great way to find people who believe in the same thing as you, who are going through the same things as you, and you're likely to find people of your same age there too that can talk to you and help you through issues. And it's crazy because actually, people in the church, if you have the correct perspective to church, it's full of people who will help and love and support you without anything in return. But also, if you feel like you're a person that has to do it alone, remember, you're always accompanied by Him. Always. Never fails. Regardless of how much you feel like you have, again, like I said it earlier, retracted, you feel like you just haven't been able to reach where you want to reach and your goals just seem so far, or it seems like, dang, like it's been 2 years. I should probably be elsewhere right now. I would prefer to be elsewhere right now. When all those things come upon you, it never turns into self blame. It also never turns into blaming of other people. Those feelings never turn into desperation. They never turn into anything wicked that would be detestable, it never turns into it turns into sorrow, but it never turns into this deep feeling of lostness because we can always find ourselves in Him. And so every time something goes wrong, it's really great to know that we do have a safety net. That and the other thing about this is that you only get the safety net, from my understanding, you only get the safety net if you actually are living by the Bible. If you want Him to save you, help you, get you out of certain situations, and you are at the same time smoking, drinking, doing all the things that you know you shouldn't, that are clearly written out in the Bible, then it's not a thing that you can take advantage of. But if you are a person who takes advantage of following the Bible, you also get to take advantage of the strength that He can give you and the fact that you can walk through it with Him. And it's, again, a great safety net to know, regardless of how this works out, regardless if I go up in this valley, this mountain lasts for 5 years, or I go down in this valley lasts for 2 years, and I find another mountain and it lasts for 10 years, and then I find a valley that lasts for 20 years. No matter how much it goes up and down and it ebbs and flows and life changes, the one thing that stands true is you are not alone, and that He will work all of it out, and that all of it is for your good. And it's interesting, but only those who are successful have become successful because the only way to success is to surrender. Now, if you're a successful business owner, you have surrendered to the nature of business. That doesn't mean that you're living a life that you actually like or love. If you are, I don't know, in college and you're passing all your classes, but you're not doing it in a way that's aligned to Him, when you fail an exam or you do something that's, you know, whatever, you cheat on something and then you feel like, oh, no, I'm gonna get kicked out of school or something like that, you do feel like you're going through it alone because you have isolated yourself. And what He is an open invitation 24/7, all the time, forever. It's almost like how some things exist and we get to participate in them. We have free will, like DoorDash, on both the delivery side and you as a consumer buying food. You have the option. DoorDash is an app, a website, it exists. That does not mean that you have to buy something, ever. It doesn't mean you ever have to go and drive and deliver food for them, ever. It's something that exists and exists without your participation. And the same thing with Instacart. You can choose to get on the app and go deliver groceries. You can choose to get on the app and order groceries. You don't have to order groceries or deliver groceries, but the app will exist regardless of your participation, regardless of your action in it. And that's the same way that He is. He's there constantly, always, literally. And we can choose, okay, I'm going to lean on Him. Or you can say, nope, I want to go the opposite direction and I want to lean this way and I don't want to interact with Him. And you can do both. That's the beauty. You have the free will. But the free will is also based in the surrender because surrendering is free will. You don't have to surrender to literally anything. You don't even have to surrender to the laws of physics. You might not make it after you jump off of a roof or something, but you don't actually have to want to or desire to abide by certain laws. The laws will always overpower you, but you don't have to listen to them. There's a lot of people that are like, I'm going to defy gravity. And that's the end of that. So it's not just about life being good with Him. It's that it's comfort and safety when it's not good. And it's happiness and gratefulness when it is good. But then also when it's sad and bad times, it's still happiness and gratefulness because you know that he's there. And you know that his promise is everything will work out and everything's for your good. And so there's got to be something in your life that you've been so used to be so obsessed with having, and you finally now have it. And how did you get there? You probably had, a few things that pushed you back in the past. You probably had something that got in your way. It wasn't just like, oh, it's gonna be straight and narrow, just perfect, just from here to here, perfect. It probably wasn't like that. Even for me, when I was in college and I was in undergrad, um, school, I realized point A is getting into school, point B is graduating and leaving. But between A and B are like exams, hundreds of exams, hundreds of credits you have to get, hundreds of conversations with professors, hundreds of like different meetings you have to schedule with your advisor, hundreds of different homework assignments, hundreds of like reports and hundreds and thousands of dollars coming to you and going out. So like paying rent or paying bills or paying for books, but then also like maybe you get like a refund check or something coming back to you. Like there's like li- literally valleys and mountains the entire way. Now you may graduate and get that degree, but anybody who went to college knows it was an A through Z or A through B process, just super easy in one way. Um, and I think a lot of people say, "Don't go to college. I wouldn't want my children to go to college." Blah blah blah. I agree wholeheartedly that college does not prepare you for life. It doesn't teach you about investing, about bills, about money, about credit. It doesn't teach you about life insurance. It doesn't teach you about health insurance. It doesn't teach you literally about buying your first car, buying your first house, how to sign for an apartment. The list literally goes on. It teaches you none of that. But what it does teach you are the fundamentals of life. And one of the biggest lessons I think everybody who went to college and finished can understand from that, that journey was that it taught them life is not A through B, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, you were able to make it through and you got the degree. Even though it was hard and difficult, and you probably had many times you wanted to quit, many times you cried, many times assignments got turned in half done, many times you just like called out for help to people or tried to like you were like literally scraping by sometimes. And I think about myself with this too, like not all the time, but like a good little chunk, I was scraping by emotionally, mentally, financially, was the all the other leaves that exist, literally scraping by with like no support system. And and when I say no, I mean like zero. And that was such a rough time, but what it taught me was that nothing that I'm gonna do in life is gonna be one straight path. And I think it prepared me a lot for my early adulthood that I'm in now, because it's like if I went to college and I entered thinking that it was just a one track thing, I would have been like, this ain't for me, I gotta go. But I didn't enter with any of that in my mind. I entered thinking, oh, this is school. I'll find out more about college when I get there. And that was helpful in some aspects because if you enter something before you have a full knowledge of it, you get the benefits of ignorance, right? People my age, in my same cohort, which is basically the class, college class that you're in, that in those are the people that you graduate with. I didn't graduate with any of those people because I graduated at a different time, but just in general, like the time that I was in school, I forgot the whole point because I was explaining what a cohort was. But it really does teach you that. And so while I don't think college is really like the end all be all for people's education, like our parents probably do, I mean, if you're my age, I guess our parents think the same type of way, but like are as like a collective, like people whose parents are like turning 60 in a few years, like those people, they all want their children to go to college. And it's not necessarily, I don't believe college is for like learning how to have a business. You're absolutely not going to learn any about that. And it's also like, I know people who are business majors who have no business, who want a business and haven't had a business. I think everything else in life is surrender and spiritual to actually attain it. And you're going to put so much brute force, brute work, brutal, like hurting towards getting something in life, and you're probably never going to get it. And if you do get it, you're not going to attain it because it's all spiritual, and it's all spiritual, and it's all um something that you need to actually know the principles of behind it. It's not so much how hard you can work, it's more about how aware are you of the principles of that thing, and are you willing to abide by them. And I think that I struggled with God for a very long time because I was like, okay, well, I don't really get it. That was like the thing. Like, I don't get it. Why am I being a Christian if life is hard with or without Him? Why would I follow God if He's not technically like tangible, or I can't speak to Him in like human language, or what? Like, what's the point? I personally am never against something. I love being wrong, honestly, because somebody else, by you telling me I'm wrong, you did the work to figure out what I was doing wrong before I did it wrong. So I love when someone tells me, "Hey, this is a better way to do it," because it's like, "Great, you saved me like 2 months of figuring that out. Appreciate you." So I'm never going to not take someone's advice, right? I always put it in my back pocket at least. And so I put that in my back pocket for a while, and I was just like, "You know what? Every time something happens, it feels like I'm starting over, but I know that I'm not." And also going through things, knowing I don't have a support system is really, really hard. And I would much rather go through it with some sort of tangibleness, tangibility, to something, literally anything. And so I through my life I've had a lot of different tangibles with like other spiritual things and other like worldly things and other whatever, whatever. But eventually I keep coming back to this thought of God. And I'm like, hmm, it just really makes sense to me. And it doesn't have to make sense to you. What I do say though is if following God doesn't make sense, make it make no, I'm just kidding. Make it make sense. I'm just kidding. But if you don't follow God and you don't quite know why you can't understand it, understand that people who are Christians or follow him also struggle with that too. The same way that following God or not following God does not negate you from hard experiences, the same way as following God doesn't negate you from being confused about his role or your role in Christ. You're still going to be confused, literally. But the point is, how do you want to be confused? Do you want to be confused on a path that seems like it may work, or on a path that you know probably won't? And the path that I know that probably won't work is focusing on using my own strength. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Because every time something happens to me, I'm trying to find somebody to call. I'm trying to find somebody to help. So I know I can't do it on my own. And I'm tired of bothering these people with my issues who are literally everybody else is scraping by too. So am I supposed to take my little scrapes and add them to your little scrapes and we both scrape by together? That doesn't make sense. So I'm like, okay, where's the one that all this comes from? And he is the one in which all this comes from. And I think that although objectively looking at my life, you're like, she's kind of successful, she's kind of smart, she's kind of all these things. None of it brings security at all. And I made a video a few weeks ago about satiation, which is like the action verb of being satisfied, which means that when you basically doing something to satisfy yourself, basically doing something so that you can feel better. Self satiation, similar to self soothing, is what I mean. And I noticed that self soothing, like there was never an end to it. It's always like something bad happens, you call your friend, you call your mom, you call your dad, you call your sister, you call your brother, you call your aunt, you call your uncle, and then like everybody kind of just like is also going through all their issues, and then you kind of feel like, okay, now I just have my issues and their issues on my plate, and now I don't even feel like my issues matter because people are going through evictions and I'm talking about learning a new skill and that I can't quite grasp yet, and they don't get it or they don't understand, or it just never aligned. And so I'm like, okay, this is like I can't. I can't. But what I have done is completely turn to him. So whenever something is, and that feels so weird to say, because I would have never said nothing like that 5 months ago. Not 5 months ago, girl. But what I have done is completely turned to him and completely said, you know what? Actually, I'm okay. I actually don't want to do this on my own. I'm actually more excited to know that all of it will work out under your power than to know how it works out and use my own power to get there. I'm okay. I don't want to do it. Give it to somebody else. Like double it and give it to the next person. I don't want to do it. I want to go follow God. Simple. I want to wake up every day. I want to read the Bible. I want to pray and I want to say, God, use my control everything that I hear from my ears, everything I touch with my hands, everything I walk on with my feet, everything I see with my eyes, everything I like touch with all my senses, anything that I perceive or that I whatever everything. Take it all over. I don't even care. Do whatever you want to do with my vessel. And all I'm allowed to do all day is to take care of my body and take care of my mind by feeding myself well and feeding my mind spiritually. Those are my two responsibilities. I eat well, I drink water, I exercise, I take care of my mind by reading the Bible or very much listening to gospel music or um, watching people that do Bible related stuff like Myron Golden, because sitting on TikTok all day scrolling is not feeding my mind. Sitting on Netflix is not feeding my mind. Like reading something that is actually of substance is what helps me. And um God is actually literally just like he's not the problem. He's not the source of all your issues. The issues are coming from the earth. That's why people who don't believe in God still have issues. When you don't believe in God and you choose not to believe in God, but you still struggle with addiction, you still struggle with all these sins, and you struggle to have a life that you love, not only because the Bible says one not to do it, but also you don't feel good when you do it. Every time you text your ex, you're like, oh, I feel terrible. Every time you smoke and drink, you're like, oh, I feel disgusting. I wish I didn't have to live off that. I feel like I'm getting addicted. Like every time you argue with someone and you love gossiping, you're like, you wish you hadn't done it. Life is full of so many regrets when you don't follow him, but at least you'll have someone to go to when you're feeling like those like things aren't working out for you. Like, you have to have something that's there. And the reason why I did it is it as in follow God is because I one see him as not the problem. I'm like, if the people of the earth, if everybody dealing with the same ups and downs, it doesn't matter whether I'm Christian or not, these issues are going to happen. What I'm more concerned with is how life can be done on easy mode. How can life be done by submitting to whatever is already in charge? Point blank. And the other thing is I simply don't want to figure it out. I simply don't want to figure it out. I am 23 and I blink my eyes and I'm going to be twice as old, 46, pushing 50, and then my life is like literally 75% over. I don't even have the time to try to figure out how to make life work. I don't. I'm better off submitting to the rules that are already here and going with the grain of life. And I think that whatever gets you to follow God is fine. Like some people have to have a dead parent and a dead sibling and like all these issues and like going to prison. And so some people have to go through a lot to get to God and or like to get to the point of when they want to follow God. They have to literally be on like life or death type situations to even want to follow God. And I'm like, no, I don't want, I'm okay. I'm literally okay. It doesn't protect me from any of those things to specifically believe in God. It doesn't make me not do those things or doesn't make me any less acceptable. You can follow God. Well, you probably have a less likely chance of going to prison if you follow God, depending on the situation. Unless, of course, you're going to jail for preaching the gospel somewhere. But it just seems like the no-brainer option when you don't have much time. Like my life is just a speck of dust to the entire world. And I'm just tired of worrying as well. Like worrying is so draining to wake up every day and just, oh, I hope I can make some money to pay my bills, or I hope I can get a new job to do whatever. And I hope that my friendships work out. And I hope that I'm able to travel. And I hope I'm able to buy a new car. And I hope and I pray that I get married. And I hope and I pray that I can like have a successful business and I can make money and I can invest. It's just too much work. It's literally too much work. And I'm choosing not to participate in the amount of work that that takes because he fortunately already came in, kind of said that. He's like, oh, yeah, the point is not for you to figure it all out. The point is that this earthly life is going to be hard regardless. And when you get to the point where you're like, I'm kind of over it, then you submit to it. It's kind of like when you know you have to stop talking to that one person, but you keep going back, you keep going back, you keep going back because you don't see it yet. But then when you finally see it after a year of like trauma, you're like, actually, I am praying that this person does never text me again. I'm praying that this person who used to reach out to me on star 67, this person who used to reach out to me through email, and this is not about one specific person. This has happened to me tens of times. Like more than 10, more than what I can count on my fingers and toes. People reaching out to me through the star 69 or through email or through sending something to me or through my friends even talking to people that I know trying to get to talk to me. That's like I used to love stuff like that, but I had to grow out of it and say, you know what? Actually, I don't want that. And when you really don't want something, it stops happening. When you really don't want it, it stops happening. Um, And I just think that he's so much bigger than any of our problems and issues anyways. And yeah. So God is really not the problem. He is not the issue. Whether you believe in him or not, you're going to have issues. It's more so how quickly can you get out of those issues? How bad do you let yourself get before you get back up? And There's an easier way to go through your trials and tribulations, and it doesn't rely on your own strength.